We're standing in African Cemetery number 2 on East 7th Street, a property that's been here since 1869. The cemetery holds the remains of many important people to the development of Kentucky and Lexington especially. Of our 8,000 burials, we know that individuals were instrumental in a number of organizations, the Colored Fair, schools, churches, other civic groups. Well, this particular cemetery was organized, managed, owned by African Americans, and this would have been the first in the history of Lexington. Lexington public cemeteries had always accepted both black and white. Although those cemeteries were segregated in terms of where individuals were buried, I found a record in town trustees that actually said Section A were for whites and Section B were for blacks. Well, unfortunately, as the town cemeteries filled, they were abandoned and neglected, overgrown, and the city would sell them for development. One of their first cemeteries they sold, and a spoke factory, for wooden wheels, was built over top of the cemetery. So African Americans generally tend to respect their dead a little bit more than just letting them be desecrated. So when they were able, after the Civil War, they purchased their own property. Kentucky had 22,703 veterans. Out of that number, what we know are here in the cemetery is 64, and those are from headstones as well as research. Every year we uncover another soldier that has been buried here in the cemetery. One of the most important people and veterans that we know about that's buried here in the cemetery is George T. Prosser. He was a member of the 54th Massachusetts Infantry. So it was chaos, literally chaos, and they didn't have a clear record of how many people had died, who had been captured. Mr. Prosser's case was uncovered when his mother went to the recruiting office and said, "Where is my son? What has happened to him?" They couldn't tell her. They assumed he had been killed, but she wanted to know specifically. So she writes a letter. They in turn ask the military that was in Fort Wagner, South Carolina, "Do you know what happened to this man?" And they discovered that he was a prisoner of war. From our archived records, and this is just literally looking at death certificates, we are evenly divided among those who are both sexes, male and female, third male, third female, and a third children. And that we can document. And among those individuals who are here, we know are men of the equine industry. We have over 80 men that we've been able to document who actually worked in the equine industry. Oliver Lewis, who was the first jockey to win the Kentucky Derby in 1875, his remains were brought back to the cemetery in 1924 when he died. And we assume, because his name is not on the family monument, but we know where his mother and brother are buried. James Sue Perkins, who was the youngest of the jockeys to win a Kentucky Derby in 1893, we know that he is here along with his family. Isaac Murphy, who was the jockey who won the first 3 Kentucky Derbies, the first black jockey to win 3 Kentucky Derbies, was originally buried here in 1896, but his body has been moved as many times as he won the Derby, 3 times. Women that we have found in our cemetery are those who formed the Colored Orphan Home. We have one monument that actually says she was a founder of the Colored Orphan Home. There were 24 women who decided in 1892 that Lexington needed a Colored Orphan Home. There was none. So children whose parents had died, either both or one parent had died, were wandering the streets. Some of them were being taken in by family members, others were just being taken in by people who cared for them. And it got to be to the point that no one family could take care of them all. It's just wonderful. It's a beautiful place, and I'm so glad that the early organizers, founded it, and people over the years have continued to maintain it and preserve it and hold it in sacred trust. So I tell everybody who's doing any kind of genealogy, any kind of history research, go to the cemetery. It's not a scary place. It's a place of history. It's a library. It's a resource. And that's how you look at it. But I'm very passionate about that. I really am.